Copwatch, policing the police every single day.
Pray his heart.
Just minutes, the family and friends of Antwon Rose will say their final goodbyes. His funeral service set to begin at the top of the hour. An East Pittsburgh police officer shot the 17-year-old last week as he ran from a car that was pulled over. He was unarmed. His death sparked days of protests that are ongoing, and his casket just arrived at the funeral service in Swissvale, Pennsylvania. That is where Athena Jones is. And Athena, for the first time, we're hearing from his mother.
Hi, Poppy. That's right. Michelle Kenny, Antwon Rose's mother, spoke with ABC's Good Morning America about the loss of her son. Watch.
I miss my baby. He murdered my son in cold blood. If he has a son, I pray his heart never has to hurt the way mine does.
The ones that say Antwon shouldn't have been in the car, to that you say,
my son is dead. For all those people that say that, their son must be at home.
People on the ground just kept saying they never actually thought this officer would be charged. They kept going out there, kept protesting, but this happened less than a week ago, and now that man involved faces the possibility of life in prison.
After days of protests over the shooting death of unarmed teen Antwon Rose, charges have been filed against the East Pittsburgh police officer who pulled the trigger.
There's no weapon that would have created a risk to Officer Rosfeld. Antwon Rose didn't do anything in North Braddock other than be in that vehicle.
Michael Rosfeld, who had only been on the job with this department for 3 weeks, now faces a possible life sentence in prison.
I find that Rosfeld's actions were intentional, and they certainly brought about the result that he was looking to accomplish.
Rose's family grieving the loss of their son in this exclusive interview with ABC News.
I miss my baby.
Now saying in a statement from their attorney that they view these charges with guarded optimism, saying there is a long road ahead to a conviction and proper sentencing, which is the only thing we will accept as justice. Rosfeld fatally shot their 17-year-old son as he was running away from a traffic stop on the night of June 19th. Investigators say that Rose and 2 others were pulled over in a car that police believed was connected to a shooting that happened earlier the same night. At least 1 person inside the car has been charged. Police say they found 2 guns in the vehicle after Antwon was shot and an empty gun clip in his pocket.
According to court records, Rosfeld says that he believed he was following the department's felony traffic stop protocol, but he also revealed that he never saw Rose with a weapon. So far, his attorney has declined all of ABC's requests for a comment. In New York, Maggie Ridley, 13 Eyewitness News.
Yeah.
I'm leaving the track behind, but I'm not standing still. And with GoDaddy, I've made my ideas real. I made my own way. Now it's time to make yours.
Everything is working just like it should.
New this morning, a police officer has been charged with 1 count of criminal homicide in the shooting death of 17-year-old Antwon Rose Jr.
Officer Michael Rosfeld is seen here in a mugshot. That picture just coming into our newsroom. Rose was shot and killed while running from a traffic stop earlier this month. His death led to protests around the city. Through their attorney, Rose's family released a statement a few moments ago saying they view the officer's arrest and filing of charges with, quote, guarded optimism, end quote. The district attorney is expected to hold a news conference about the officer's arrest later today.
An East Pittsburgh police officer has been charged with homicide in the shooting death of Antwon Rose, an unarmed black teenager. 30-year-old Michael Rosfeld faces a single criminal count for the June 19th shooting death of the 17-year-old. Rosfeld has reportedly turned himself in.
We don't get it. Shake down.
The teen's death sparked a wave of protests and is the latest in a string of killings of black men by police that has fueled a national debate about racial bias in the U.S. Video footage of Rose's death was circulated widely online and showed him running from police before he was shot.
We do this for Antwon.
Rosfeld, who's been an officer in the region since 2011, had been sworn in to the East Pittsburgh Department less than 2 hours before the deadly shooting.
What does he say? What do you say about this charge of criminal homicide?
Well, in looking at the affidavit of probable cause, which is the facts which support the issuance of a warrant, which is written by the police officers, I don't think it's a murder case. I don't. I don't know if there were mistakes made in police procedure. That's to be determined later. But I don't see it as a murder case. I really don't.
What do you see it as being?
At the most, an involuntary manslaughter case. Certainly. But I'll see it as an acquittal. I mean, if everybody looks at it on the facts, I mean, what was this police officer supposed to do? There's a car, obviously was involved in a shooting, an attempted murder right up the road. The windows are blown out on the car from return fire from the victim in that case. And he pulls the car over. And the people are supposed to stay in the car and listen to what the officer says until everybody can get to the bottom of what's going on. You know, this wasn't stopping a car for going through a stop sign or for speeding. This is stopping a car that was involved in a shooting right up the road.
So to be clear, though, you have someone running away from the vehicle, not menacing the officer. What is the justification for firing shots in a residential area at someone who's running away?
Because legally you can do that. You're supposed, if somebody come in this courthouse and shot somebody and then gets out of the courthouse and runs down Grant Street and a police officer's standing there with a gun, is he supposed to just let him go?
Did he know or believe that this was a person who committed a homicide?
I think that's a very reasonable belief, considering the fact that the other shooting had happened a mile away. 11 minutes had only passed. The car that he's stopping has windows shot out in it, and he knew that from being at the first crime scene. The officer knew that.
I'm going to ask you a question in the wording of chants that we've heard from protesters. They are asking publicly, 3 shots in the back. How can you justify that?
It's a fleeing felon from a car involved in an attempted homicide scene minutes earlier.
And you feel that is, what, justified homicide?
Under the law. If you look at the case law and a police officer's use of deadly force, I think it is.
What does the officer say specifically about the incident and his thinking or rationale or justification for what he did in those moments?
I'm not going to talk about my conversations with my client, Bob.
So often there typically is not a release on bond in a homicide case. District Attorney's Office, I just saw, put out a release saying that they don't feel that bond was appropriate in this case, but they will not challenge it. Your client charged with a homicide, should he be free with unsecured bond?
Yes, he should. That statute only applies if a judge decides that the facts would support a first-degree murder conviction, a willful, deliberate, and premeditated shooting. And to me, that's just not this case.
The public officials who've been speaking out in response to the issue have said that they feel there should be a trial by jury. Does your client, do you wish to see a trial by jury in this case?
Well, we haven't even had the preliminary hearing yet, so let's see if the case gets past the preliminary hearing. They have to show a prima facie case at the preliminary hearing, and then obviously if it goes past that, then it probably would be a jury trial.
So implicit in that, you believe that you will have a chance to challenge the prosecution's evidence so that your client wouldn't face trial?
Yes.
Elaborate on that.
Well, depending upon what the testimony is at the preliminary hearing, there may be a habeas corpus motion filed. I don't know. We're talking about a movie I haven't seen yet. So once we have the hearing and they put the witnesses on and they're subject to cross-examination, and then we'll see what they have to say.
You alluded to earlier when you felt that this was not a criminal homicide case, that perhaps it could be charged as something less than that. What do you believe from a defense point of view, is the most that he could be charged with, and would you seek a plea to any lesser charge?
Well, I'm not going to seek a plea to a lesser charge, no. But I don't think it's a murder case.
What could it be if not that, or if not exonerated?
It could be voluntary manslaughter or involuntary manslaughter. I don't see it as a murder case, I don't.
Well, to people here involuntary, and they'll say, well, we've seen that video, we know that 3 shots were fired at this person who was running away. In what sense would that be involuntary?
If it's reckless and grossly negligent conduct, as opposed to willful, deliberate, premeditated killing. That's the difference.
So your client free on unsecured bond, were there any conditions to that bond or monitoring?
No. If he's devastated by this. He's not going anywhere. He's seeking some counseling. I mean, he's not happy about what happened here. Not because he's been arrested. He's just not happy that he had to do his job. And no officer is happy about these kinds of situations. He has to deal with it. There's a young boy that was, is not with us, and he's not happy about that.
And what is his status with the department right now?
He's on leave. I mean, he's not working.
Is it unpaid or paid leave?
Unpaid.
What more can you tell us about anything that he is seeking through you to convey publicly, or any further comment or response that you may have?
Let's see how it plays out. Let's see what the true facts are, what really happened from everybody's perspective, including the physical evidence, and we'll just have to see.
A week after 17-year-old Antwon Rose was killed by police in East Pittsburgh, the local district attorney's office says the officer who shot him, 30-year-old Michael Rosefeld, will be charged with criminal homicide.
Based on that evidence, I find that Rosfeld's actions were intentional.
Rosefeld shot Rose 3 times on June 19th as he ran from a car after a traffic stop. According to police, Rose was unarmed and a passenger in the car. Authorities suspected him of being involved in an earlier shooting nearby. The driver was later questioned and released, while another passenger, a juvenile, was arrested on separate charges.
Antwon Rose was hit 3 times. He was hit in the side of the face, in the cheek. The bullet exits through the nasal cavity. He's also hit in the right elbow from the rear. That's a through-and-through wound. He's hit in the mid-back, and that slug was recovered in his chest. That's the fatal shot.
For days, demonstrators took to the streets of Pittsburgh demanding justice, while Rose was laid to rest on Monday. Police say Rosefeld had been sworn into the East Pittsburgh police force just hours before the shooting, though he worked with other local departments for 7 years. The attorney for Rose's family taking to Twitter after the announcement, saying that the arrest is a small stride towards justice, but they still have a very long road ahead. Amaka Ubaka, 7 News.
There are breaking developments this morning in last week's fatal police shooting in East Pittsburgh. According to online court records this morning, a charge of criminal homicide has been filed against the East Pittsburgh police officer Michael Rosefeld. This stems from the events of last Tuesday night, in which Rosefeld shot and killed 17-year-old Antwon Rose Jr. He had run from a car that Rosefeld had stopped. The car's description matched one seen nearby the scene of a drive-by shooting in North Braddock earlier that evening. We continue to gather more information on this. Again, new developments in the case. We'll pass it along as they come in. But again, we are learning from online court records that a charge of criminal homicide has been filed against the police officer, Michael Rosefeld.
Yeah, Janelle, I spoke with Officer Michael Rosefeld face-to-face this afternoon. He tells me he is trying right now to deal with what happened, but he also says he has a lot of support from local law enforcement as well as his family, and that is certainly helping. But he says this is quite a difficult time. He did not want to talk about the investigation or any of the details leading up to the shooting of 17-year-old Antwon Rose. In fact, he told me that he has been staying away from all news coverage. He does not want to know what's happening. He's just trying to deal with this shooting and be with his family. Officer Rosfeld tells me, though, that he has been a police officer since 2011. He says he has worked in Oakmont and Harmer, as well as at the University of Pittsburgh, before coming to East Pittsburgh as a police officer about 3 weeks before the shooting. Officer Rosfeld says he wasn't even aware of this video captured by a witness as he fired his gun 3 times at Antwon Rose and another person running away from the vehicle that Rosfeld had just pulled over. Rose was hit all 3 times and died at the hospital. Allegheny County police investigators say the car Rose was running from had just been involved in a shooting in North Braddock, and Officer Rosfeld had the driver in custody when the others took off. I spoke with the mayor of East Pittsburgh about those moments and how the tiny borough, just 3/4 of a square mile, is dealing with the shooting.
First of all, most importantly, okay, my thoughts, prayers, and condolences go out to Antwon's family, okay, and along with all his friends. I'm sure that they lost someone that they cared for deeply too, and I hope that they can find some peace in the next few days. I know it won't be easy, but one thing I'm asking is that we don't define the borough of East Pittsburgh and our police department for this one very tragic thing that happened.
Lewis Payne tells me he has been the mayor of East Pittsburgh for more than 20 years. And in his time here, he says an East Pittsburgh police officer has never fired their weapon. As for Officer Michael Rosfeld, he is now on leave, but he's a part-time police officer, so that is an unpaid leave. Reporting live in East Pittsburgh, Marcy Cipriani, Pittsburgh's Action News 4.
Shooting at him. No, I'm recording this. Why are they shooting? All they did was run and they're shooting at them.
I find that Rosfeld's actions were intentional, and they certainly brought about the result that he was looking to accomplish. He was not acting to prevent death or serious bodily injury. It's my position that he is not entitled to a justification charge to a jury as a defense.
Police use who may want to retaliate against him physically.
Hey Charlotte County, this is Charlotte County Copwatch, and I just wanted you to know that I am using this stuff under fair use, and also remember to like and subscribe this channel. Also too, keep in mind I do not make any money on YouTube. This is 5 hours work a day, fighting for freedom, and you can donate with PayPal and Patreon. I just want you to think about this. If everybody gives to PayPal and Patreon, Patreon is every month. Actually, PayPal you can do every month. I have 12,000 subscribers. If everybody gives, I can quit my regular job and go full-time investigations on Charlotte County and possibly even more and beyond. So just keep that in mind. If everybody helps out, I can go full-time doing this. Thanks.